Hi everyone, it's Jillian with Parting Pro, and I'm here today with the esteemed Chelsea Tolman. Chelsea is an incredible do-everything kind of lady. She's a funeral director, heavily influential in our profession. She's also a huge member of her community and recently published author of a book that's out. We'll touch on that in a minute, and blogger, social media extraordinaire. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Chelsea. Chelsea, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you started in the profession and where you are now.
Thank you so much for having me on your video blog. This is really cool. I do love Parting Pro. We have been following each other for a long time now, and I really appreciate your posts and the interaction that we have online. Yeah, so I grew up in Sandy, Utah. I was always kind of a little bit lost in the career field. I was going to be a guitar player, a veterinarian. I was going to be an auto mechanic. But funeral service never crossed my mind. I was in Las Vegas working at a junkyard and just loving being in the junkyard and working on the cars and being the mechanic, greasy girl. I absolutely loved it. And I had some coworkers that had some deaths that were very close to them. So in the course of them going to the funeral home and talking to the funeral director, they would come back and tell me stories about the funeral director, and it was always the funeral director helped me with this, the funeral director said this, and it was funeral director, and I'm like, who is this person that has so much influence over your experience, you know, with funerals and this really intensely emotional and private time in your life, and the stranger comes along and makes things better and helps you through it. So I called a funeral home and I talked to a funeral director, and I got off the phone, and that was it. I was going to be a funeral director. So packed my family, went all the way up to Georgia, Decatur, Georgia, and went to college at Gupton Jones College of Mortuary Science. And I've been in the funeral industry ever since. And that was right around 2001.
Wow. So you told us where you went to mortuary school, and I'm going to kind of take you back to those days just for a minute.
Yes, yes.
What was the discussion like at that time about technology in the funeral profession? What technology was taught? What technology was used maybe in school or during your apprenticeship or provisional? Set the scene for us a little bit.
Okay. Well, in college, there wasn't, like, in my classes, we didn't use a lot of technology other than, you know, some of the testing was on a computer. And of course, we had a computer class, but we didn't learn, like, software and how it kind of integrated into being a funeral director, entering information and things like that. The first funeral home that I worked for, they had a software system that you just inputted all the information for the funeral service, and then it would kind of help you generate reports on, you know, what we're doing, how we're doing it, put it on the memorial folder or program or register book and that type of thing. But we were still hand typing death certificates. And, you know, things like that. So there wasn't a ton of technology there. But now, of course, technology plays a huge role in funeral service. We almost rely on these software programs to help us run our businesses. It's actually, you know, that, and of course, social media now is taking, you know, it has a huge part in funeral service. But yeah, those software programs are priceless to funeral directors. It cuts our time in half. We don't have to handwrite everything anymore.
Exactly. I remember, you know, kind of going back to the back office, so to speak, you know, even just recently, not even as a provisional, and I saw a covered typewriter, and I thought, okay, well, it's covered. Maybe that means they don't use it, but it's still here. Okay. And then I realized it was only covered because it had like memorial programs piled on top of it. But at the same time, like being able to communicate with a family on a smartphone, or being able to even offer arrangements on a smartphone or online is something that could be a total, it could change things up a lot. Do you think it's possible to offer an online arrangement that is still meaningful for a family and still important for a family?
Absolutely, I do, and I think that's the direction that we are going. You know, we haven't actually had a conversation, but that's actually what we're looking into right now is finding that perfect software company that can create, a good cohesive piece of software where our families can go online and give us the information that we need. And so when we are face to face with our families, we can focus on other questions about the background of the deceased and where they came from and what they love to do, and not have families sit in with us for 4 hours just to get that information. So I think it's priceless. I think getting some of that information online through emails, in a cohesive manner is really important. I remember it was probably 3, maybe 4 years ago, the company that I was with, we started having arrangements with our computer screen right there in the arrangement room. And so the family could watch us type in the information. And I thought that was kind of a big step, but now we're going even further.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, and I remember that too. I remember we came into work one day and there were flat screen TVs being mounted in the arrangement conferences, and like all these computer like keyboards were being unpacked, and I thought, what is happening?
Yeah.
And like at one hand, I'm really excited because I'm seeing this happening, and I'm thinking, okay, it's finally here. We can get rid of the typewriter. And then on the other hand, I was kind of scared, like, how are families going to receive this, and how are they going to think about it? Because I can love technology all day long, and I'm on my smartphone. It's right here. But if families aren't into it, then as a director, I didn't want anything to do with it. And so really once I started looking at Parting Pro, that's a big thing that drew me to them, is that first it's offered as an option to your families. So it may not be for every single person every single time, but it is an option that's available there. And what I loved is that it gave the families transparency about our pricing, our service offerings and merchandise. It put them in the driver's seat in like a no pressure environment. And then we could really connect, like you're talking about, on the meaningful ways to really celebrate their lives and just what we were doing together.
Yeah, I think the most like the key word that you were just talking was transparency. When you're sitting with your family and you've got this paper and you're just writing things down, they don't know what you're writing, they don't know what you're talking about. You can ask a question, and it's almost like having it up on the screen where they can see it, they can look at it. It does bring transparency and maybe a little more comfort.
Absolutely, yeah. And so kind of speaking about like transparency and comfort, I want to dive into your new book that you have out.
Yes.
I've read a little bit of it, and I'm just, my mind is blown already, because I'm like, hey, you have my thoughts, you're in my brain. So share with us about it. Tell us, give us the title, how we can access it, and tell us maybe a little snippet.
Yeah, definitely. So I started writing this book about a year ago, and it started as a blog. You can go to chelseatolman.com and find my blog. And what I've done is I've just taken a step-by-step look at how I felt during, or before, during, and after meeting with families, dealing with the funerals, dealing with the deceased, getting them prepared, and how there are a lot of books out there from other funeral directors, and you can tell a story and you can tell what happened, but I think it's important for the families, for people in our profession, to actually see that a lot of the frustrations, the things that are funny, the things that are sad, that, you know, what a funeral director goes through and what it feels like. So that's what my book is all of those stories, basically from a very intimate point of view of my experiences. It's a really important part of bringing funerals. So, you know, we're trying to get people to talk more about death and dying and make it more transparent, as we were talking about before. And I think my book does a very good job of that. It is called Speaking of the Dead by Chelsea Tolman. Right now you can get it on Amazon.com. There's a Kindle version and a paperback version, and I absolutely believe that anybody who reads it will get something out of one of those stories.
Awesome. So what would you, as author now, and as like an industry really leader, kind of a trailblazer, I think that you are, what would you tell your mortuary school self now looking back? If you could talk to that young woman, what would you tell her about being in this profession that you know now?
You know, take it slow, take it easy, embrace every experience you have. It can be really nerve-wracking, but yeah, take it slow, embrace every moment. And I had my book to read when I was in mortuary college. Honestly, I think that would have been a big eye-opener on what I was getting myself into. And I did a lot of research, of course, but there wasn't a lot out there when I went to college, so I didn't have a lot of resources. So yeah, I think if you could read my book and understand what it really means to be in the middle of it. Yeah, if I knew then what I know now, it may not have been as scary getting into meeting with families, going on removals, being the director, being the person in charge. It may have been a little bit easier of a transition.
And do you think, especially being a female in our profession, do you think having a book like yours to read offers some insight on to that unique experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are several stories in there, the struggles of being not only a female, but I was young and I am very small. And in that, you know, in that area at that time, it was unheard of for a small, young female to be in the industry doing the same job that men were doing. So it was a struggle. I had to go through a lot of hurdles. I had to not just do the job, I had to do the job better.
So especially now, kind of circling back with the idea of online arrangements and more women coming into our profession, do you think that technology can, number one, sort of bridge some of those gaps? And number two, do you think it can really give us opportunities to spend more personal time, more time with our families, and still serve families that are in need?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely believe that the technology component, like you said, letting a family go online or send us information in a software system, that we can spend more time with them on a more intimate level. You know, helping them go through pictures and being kind of part of, which is it is a bonding process, the funeral director and the family. So that they do have a really good experience and are able to honor their loved one in a really cohesive and intimate way.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, I would love to hear if you want to give us like a tiny little like snippet or lead into one of your favorite stories from the book. I think we would love a little bit of a teaser for our audience, if you're allowed.
Yes, absolutely. So I actually can. It's one of my favorite stories because it actually speaks basically for all funeral directors and the experiences that we go through, and I guess kind of helps bridge the gap between what people think we do and what we actually do. All right, so this is called We Will Always Remember. The profession of death is harder than most funeral directors make it seem. The public only sees well-dressed professionals, stoic and pressed and always there to make everything go as planned. However, in the back rooms, grown men and women stand over the body of a teen who has taken their own life in a horrible way and wonder, what could have gone so wrong? We cradle dead infants in our arms and revel at their tiny perfections while meticulously wrapping them in clean duck and bunny printed blankets for you to hold them in. We go home after a long day with the smears of mascara on our shoulders and comforting a sobbing, hysterical wife whose husband was killed too soon in an unforeseeable accident. We hold back our emotions when a toddler is lifted to see her grandmother lying in a casket and clumsily tucks a Crayola-colored picture in grandma's motionless hands. The business of death is real. It is raw, and we are not always the kind-faced, open-armed, and seemingly unwrinkled, patient people you see in the lobbies of funeral homes and standing tall next to a shiny Cadillac hearse. The day for a funeral director starts with stumbling out of bed, scrubbing off the sleep, and staring back at the image in the mirror with a good old-fashioned pep talk, never knowing what the day ahead has in store for us. We carefully choose our two-piece suit, shirt to match, and shoes we can get through the day in. Dry cleaning, pressing shirt creases, shining shoes, and making sure we have plenty of fresh socks and stockings at the ready is a constant concern and task in assuring that the families we sit across from and the people attending the funerals we direct only see a well put together professional person who can handle whatever needs to be done without question. So that's about half of it. I'll just leave it right there.
Wow. No, I love it. I think as intimate of a glimpse as people can have of us as real people, that's exactly what should be put out there. And I think a lot of directors operate under this guise of the least that a family knows about me, the better, or the least human that they see me, the better, because then they will listen to me. And I just don't agree with that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was taught. When in the beginning years of my career, that's what we did. We didn't get personal. We were the suits, and we were in the background. But I have learned over the years of having that bond with families and really connecting on a human and intimate level, that they get a much better experience if they know me.
I do think it's possible, and maybe this is the millennial coming out, I do think it's possible to have that bond and have that connection and still do things the way that a family wants to do them, keep them at home and keep them where they're comfortable to make arrangements. And you can do that now with the technology that we have, with the internet, with the tools that are available. I don't think you have to choose anymore. And I think the sooner our profession can kind of see that opportunity to have it both ways and to be in two places at once, you really can. And it's a neat thing to get to see.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I loved getting to chat with you. And tell us again, just real quick, where people can get your book. I just want you to say it again so that they can go order it right now.
Yes, definitely. So go to Amazon.com. You can get the Kindle version or the paperback version, which is available on Prime. And it's called Speaking of the Dead by Chelsea Tolman.
All right, parting prowers, fabulous talk today. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.